And we're back to talk about ternary form. So I've got this document with the notes for this week on it. I'm going to put the ternary notes in this as well and just keep it all in the same document. But I am going to scroll down to a new page. So, ternary form. You might know already, or you might be able to guess from the names. Binary form essentially has two main parts. Ternary form has three main parts. So we talk about this a little bit differently, and we'll start with what we would call sectional ternary. Most ternary forms are going to at least be sectional, but of course there are different variations of this. So there's an A section, and then a B section, and then an A prime section. And you might be saying, but wait a minute, that's exactly like how you described rounded binary, and sometimes it actually can be a little bit hard to tell, but with ternary form we want to say that each of the three parts has a more discrete, more distinctive quality to it, so that they could each be their own little standalone piece in a way that a contrasting middle or a digression really wouldn't be. Okay, so let me add a couple things. In the A section, toward the end of it, we'll get a pack, in whatever key that section has been in. And in B, we might get a perfect authentic cadence, but we probably won't. And then we'll go back to A prime, of course, at the end of which there will be another PAC. And let me draw a couple of lines here to kind of emphasize this. That, and like that, and here's the very end. All of these might have repeat signs, so the whole thing might get repeated a whole bunch. Really, that one in a sectional piece, why does it still look like the eraser? Okay. Yeah. In a sectional piece, it might look more like a dotted line between B and A prime, and there might be, at this point, I'll just scribble it here, what we call a retransition, and I abbreviate that retrans. Very good handwriting. Okay, so taking the drawing away. Sometimes a retransition happens between B and the return of A. Usually it sets up the dominant of the home key. Okay, so for example, in the Chopin that we're about to look at, that is basically what happens. We have an A section, a B section with a long retransition, and then a return of A. So, actually, speaking of Chopin, let's get into it, and I will start by playing the Chopin recording instead of trying to play it myself. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit. We won't put Roman numerals on the entire thing, but if you want to add some, go right ahead. Okay, to start with, in ternary form, you can safely assume, as I said before, with binary form that we'll start with A. That's pretty normal. And we start in E minor, and we'll continue in E minor until, this is the great thing about Chopin mazurkas, is that a lot of times they have a nice, clear double bar at the end of whatever that A section is. So notice that we start in E minor. I'm probably going to shrink this label a little bit, but maybe not actually. It's kind of nice. We start in E minor, and we stay in E minor through that section, even though there might be some secondary chords. There's usually a lot of chromaticism in this style. But then by the time we get here, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the home key. And notice that this is right where our big dividing line happens. So I'll just point that out with this line here. And so at that point, notice that there are accidentals in the right hand, and it looks like we've changed keys. So instead of E minor, we've stayed relatively close to be in C major, which we'll identify with Roman numerals. So in the key of E minor, a C major chord would be 6, and so we will identify the key with the same kind of Roman numerals. And then we proceed in C for a little while. And I can't really play this, but let me give you just a rough outline. If I just play the left hand, let me play a little bit of that section. And then things start to happen. We get an A minor kind of chord there for a moment, and then an abrupt key change. This movement from what sounds like B to E sounds like a cadence. So actually here we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of what is 5 compared to where we started, right? We have a pack in E major, oh, excuse me, not 1, not 5, a major 1, which is strange. And then instead of immediately returning to the A material, we get this again. Etc. So we get this pack, and then it kind of just keeps going. So we do say that this is a B section, actually. This is our B section, closed off entirely from the A that came before it, but it has a cadence in not the home key and not the key where it starts, and then it just starts moving kind of chromatically all around. And then we have this kind of chromatic retransition. Sorry. Etc. Notice that eventually, where it says stretto, it keeps doing that kind of chromatic oscillation. And then all of a sudden that is, I'll circle it, a 5 chord of the home key. We've just sort of moved there in this, like, what I would call linear voice leading, just moving one half step at a time until we get to 5 of the key where we started, and then we're back. So at that point, we have a return of A that we'll call A prime. But I want to go back up and label this more clearly. After this pack here, we have the retransition, which I'm just going to call retrans and say it starts right here in this bar where it sounds like B is about to repeat, but it doesn't repeat. And so we go on and we return to A. Of course, the ending of A is a little bit different so that it can end in a more final manner. And now that we've labeled those parts, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to the whole thing again earlier in the video. Okay, so if we go back and look at our chart, I had you label that, or I would call that sectional ternary. I don't know why it's giving me that little anchor. That's fun. Let's see what happens if I underline it. Nothing weird. Okay. Oh, it's anchored to this thing, maybe. Anyway, there's sectional ternary. We had a clear pack at the end of A, a less clear ending to B, and then another clear pack at the end of A prime. So the thing about ternary is that it also has there's another kind of it that we would call full sectional ternary. And I want to just make sure I've defined both of these for you. So here, let me put this up here. Sectional ternary. A is a complete harmonic unit and closes with a pack. In full sectional ternary, A, B, and A prime are each complete harmonic units and close with a PAC in their keys. B probably has its own key. It may still feature a retransition. So there are probably versions of full sectional ternary that you already know. And let me add another thing. Compound, ternary. Almost always, full sectional. A and B have nested binary forms inside. So not just a sentence or a period, but A will have an entire binary form and B will have its own entire binary form. And then at least some of that will come back in A prime. It makes sense that that's full sectional in that case because A and B have to be really separate from each other for B to have its own unique binary form. So that form would look a little different if I were to kind of make a new chart. I've got A, and I've got B, and I've got A prime. And within that I've got A, I use this upper and lowercase A, no, little b, little A prime, little b, little x, little b prime. Or you could say digression is another thing that you could put in there for the center, and then A, B, A prime come back there. And so if I can switch to draw mode for a minute, these are also really discrete from each other. They may also have repeat signs, that is normal. If I can also then, switching back off draw, actually here, no, I didn't think that would be tied to anything, no. Okay, I'll just add it up here. I was going to say, so I was going to add here, each must close with a pack. So they're thematically and harmonically closed, both. Okay. Oh, so some prominent examples would include da capo aria, which is not always full sectional, but often is, and minuet and trio form. So those are ones that you've probably heard before. You probably are familiar with this form, you just may not know that it had a name. Okay, so for this example, hello iMovie. For this example, let's go to this Mozart second movement of the K545 Sonata. The first movement sounds like this, you know it. So this movement, instead, we've got G major as our starting point, and I'm going to play it. I may stop and start and talk a little bit as I go. And so if you scroll down to where I stopped playing, I played all the way through all of that, you'll notice that there's a big change in the key. I'll play that in a minute. Everything I played, the first 2 pages, are all one binary form together. And so let's mark this up by saying, here's big A. And that's the beginning of the ternary form, and it's also the beginning of the binary form, and I'll use my lowercase a here to show that. So I'll use digression on the score because it's easier to see. So, and all of this, because here we have our half cadence. So I've reached a half cadence here. All of that means is an antecedent, which means we're probably dealing with some kind of compound period, but we can come back to that. In the meantime, so here's our half cadence. I'm gonna just put it right there. We can get into these layers. The ternary part, the binary part within the A section of the ternary, the compound period that probably has nested forms inside of it. It's just, layers upon layers of form. And that's something that, a composer like Mozart liked to do. It sounds really cool. Gives you a lot to take in when you're listening to it. Okay, anyway, here is the giant consequent of this very large period that's happening. And at the end, we get, of course, a PAC in the home key where we're supposed to be. Then we have, because remember this is a giant binary form, we have our digression, which I'm going to keep in lowercase just to make it very clear which part we're dealing with. There's our digression. And then you might have been able to tell, again, the same principle applies, that you should listen for cadences and where material repeats. So if I play just the digression, scrolling up, you might have heard that as a cadence. If I played just from right in this bar here, cadential 6/4 leading to 5/3. So there's our, actually a peck to end the little digression that was happening. But of course it's in the wrong key, so we get this kind of mini retrans happening right about here. And we're back. But of course this is just little a prime, right? We're still in the binary form that's happening in this, you know, all within this ternary form. I'm going to shrink this. I hate to do it because then I'll have to reset it again, but let's make it smaller. Kind of emphasizes what it's actually doing to make it that size. Okay, there's our retransition. There's our little a prime. That means, okay, here's our strong cadence to finish off the first section, of the ternary form. Let me make this big again. Okay, there's our pack. And then here is our next section. So here's B, and we want it to be nice and big. I might even make it bigger than that. There's B. So I'll start playing at the top of this page with our B section. That should sound familiar to you. So looking at B, B is still also going to be compound, which means that there is a little b starting here as well. So if I move the big B up a little bit, move the little b right there. So there's little b, little binary form happening inside. And then we can ask ourselves, well, where are the different sections of that? So where does little b end and where does the digression begin, if there is one? Not yet. perhaps right about there, because we've had a cadence, right? There's a little lead in is what I would call that. But in any case, here's our pack. It's in the key of B flat, not the key that this section started in, but the key of B flat, which relative to where we began, is flat 3, right? I don't have a flat symbol that I'm going to import, so there's that. Or I could just do without the Roman numeral, it would be easier, wouldn't it? But lowered Roman numeral 3 is how I would represent that. And then we have a little lead in here. Followed by our digression, lowercase, because, so here's the cadence. Still in the binary form of the B section. Here's the digression. That does sound almost like a half cadence there. So that is the thing that, believe it or not, ends the digression. So we put that right there. Here comes little b prime. It's not so much a return to the very beginning, although it is rhythmically pretty similar to what we've heard before and gesturally pretty similar. It's just harmonically new. Chromaticism to just be back. So here's our pack in little 1, right? We're in the parallel minor at that point. We have another little lead in, and finally all the way back to big A prime right there. So big A prime, let's see how much of the binary form comes back. There could have been the end of it, right? Because that's the end of what was originally in the binary form of the original A section, but we get this little additional part. And I actually agree with, I don't always agree with these, but the editor's additional analysis thing here, I agree. This is a coda. So we get a coda after having all of the other sections complete. Right here we had our pack in 1. That would have been enough. But instead we're going to have a coda as well that actually gets us to a more final pack at the very, very end. So I didn't label all of the return of those little a digression a things, but we can go ahead and do that now actually. Let's just do it to be extra thorough. A little a comes back as well. Does it all come back? I guess it doesn't. It's just little a that comes back and not the digression. It looks to me more like it's little a prime. So let's note that here as well. That we get when a prime returns, we don't get the entire binary form. A lot of times they do that. They skip the rest of the binary form in the a prime section because it's just like, it's too much. By then you've heard it enough, you kind of get the point. They want to get on to the next movement. So that is how that one works, and we have a coda. And it's really good to, let me get back to my notes here and just note that a coda may follow the end of a prime. A prime may not have the full binary form nested, but we still call it full sectional compound ternary. It's a whole lot of words to label this piece with, but that is the case. I'll go back and put that at the top of the score as well. This one is full sectional compound ternary. Is it possible that you could have a full sectional ternary that's not compound? Yes, absolutely. Is it as common? I'm not sure. I kind of don't think so. I think full sectional compound is very common because of all the different layers that it allows the composer to add. So, if this was a form class or just a tonal theory class entirely, we would do some more examples of binary and ternary, and we actually will see them come back a little bit. Binary especially we'll see come back a little bit when we get to rondo soon, but for now, these are the examples I'm going to show you of binary and ternary. So if you have questions, definitely let me know. I'll make sure all these annotated documents are posted in the discussion for the week. Please send me questions or send me additional annotations if you've made any, like Roman numerals, and you want to check them. You can also put them in the discussion thread for your classmates to see. And I'll see you next week. Bye.